Do you like our little
So,
card?
Yeah.
so we're just waiting for it.
Yeah, we just
Okay.
wait. Are we live? Okay, we are live now. So hey everyone, my name's Javier,
And I'm Ewan. Lovely
and,
to see you.
and welcome to Cooldown. Let's unwind before your next game. So, Ewan, why are we wearing headphones?
We are wearing headphones because we aren't alone today. We are joined by the lovely Grace. Would you like to introduce yourself, Grace?
Hey there. So, hi to everyone who's listening. I'm Grace. I'm currently a background artist working in Brownback Films and Studio ZMA. But thank you so much for having me, guys. Honestly, it's a pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure
to
having
be
you here,
here.
Grace. So, Grace, first thing I want to ask you is, what's it like working in visual development?
Are you asking specifically for the game industry
Yeah,
or the animation
is that all
industry?
right?
Because they're quite
Like
different.
game industry, because what I've written down is you used to work for Supercell, right?
That's right. So I worked in Supercell like 5 to 6 months, I believe. It was for me, I was working on the Moco game for their loading screens and some concepts. I would say what was your question again? Like, what do I do in visual
Yeah.
development
So
How do
or?
you find it? Like, what is the industry like? Obviously, you're a bit of a freelancer, so that must be sort of challenging as well, or bring its own challenges as well as studio work.
Mm.
So, how do you find sort of visual development in gaming?
I would say it's really depends on the studio you may say. There's like a different studios have different needs in terms for my role as a visual development artist. So for Supercell, they need me to do some environment concepts,
okay.
environment layouts, environment color scripts and whatnot. But there is studios like Red Chop Games. They are smaller indie studio, gaming studio, where they need me to do more prop concepts, vehicle concepts, many, many more. So I would say in a way it is basically like a concept artist, but we
Ooh.
focus more on the world building and more of the color, the scenes you may say. Yeah. I
Okay,
hope that
That's
makes
awesome.
sense.
What's
Yeah,
your sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
favorite part? Because obviously, that's a lot of different styles of art.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite things to draw if you had to pick?
Ah, shit. I mean, if anyone's watching this and probably listening to this podcast, if they could put up my portfolio, that'd be great. But I really like to do like atmospheric, colorful pieces that would tell
Oh,
a
okay.
strong story of how the world would visually look like. I'm a huge fan of games like Gris, if you guys know Gris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gris is I think is a good game example for what I'm trying to aim for in terms of my portfolio direction, art direction, that's for sure. I I think that's why when Supercell reached out to me and when Red Chops reached out to me, it's very colorful based games. That's why I got super excited and that's why I took it. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
hopefully that answers your
And Chris, how
question.
long
Yeah.
have you been in this industry for then?
Good question. Well, to answer the previous statement where you guys said I'm doing freelance, that is a really tricky question. Like, I would say I'm not really exactly a freelancer as of now
Yeah.
because I'm trying to look for a full-time gig. But due to the current circumstances with how there is AI art and lots of layoffs,
Mm,
people have fear to hire someone long term. That's why you may see people working like for freelancing, but they're trying to do full-time. So I would say as of now, I'm a full-timer artist, but back then I was a freelancer for 3 years working for small to mid-sized clients, and I think that would be more of a freelancing thing where it's like I'm just looking for clients aggressively on a monthly basis. But now I'm trying to do full-time, but it's super hard when they set the contract like 2 to 3 months. Yeah,
And
yeah, I
so
guess.
AIR is really having a sort of impact on your role and kind of
Uh-huh.
how the industry, especially with art, is starting to function. Have you felt the
Yeah.
effects yourself personally besides just struggling to find a job? Have you seen it like people taking anything you've done or anything like that?
Question. I mean, AI does affect everything. I mean, for journalism, does it affect you guys as well, like AI and stuff?
yeah.
Especially with
Definitely.
ChatGPT, right? And all
Yeah.
the yeah, many. I think it's the same thing, right? Like it's like it affects your industry, but not really exactly affecting you straight on. But it could be pretty scary, I guess, like in that way. For me, it's not really a huge damage so far, mostly because so far I managed to find a lot of gigs. So I think it really depends on the soft skills and how you survive through the job hunting phase because most people try to focus on getting a good portfolio, but they don't focus on soft skills like socializing, marketing, communicating with directors, and so much more. because most artists are very introvert. So I think that is a big struggle, especially when you're competing something like AI. And
Mm.
those bigger artists, like because of the AI art, lots of senior artists got laid off and they're really good, right? So then
No.
you're competing with the senior artists and you gotta just stand out a lot more, like soft skill wise. Yeah,
I genuinely
I hope
think
that makes
AI
sense.
is really terrifying. Like for me, we did a piece in journalism about, or one of our colleagues did, about how AI is affecting voice
Wow.
acting as well, and how people
Yeah.
are
Wow.
like on that side of the video game industry are also trying to fight against people's actual voices, sorry, being replicated, which is just crazy to me. The fact that
How
people's
how
entire
great
identity.
how greatly does it affect like journalism? Like, could you tell me in detail because
Well,
I'm
it's
curious.
hard, because obviously articles these days, you want it instantly, and AI can provide that compared to the average journalist.
Ah,
But
shit.
I feel like when you see AI, it's too formal.
Yeah,
When you read an article by
Oh,
an AI, it
okay.
doesn't sound right. It sounds robotic. It gives you the facts, but there's no personality. That's the way I see AI. What about you, Ewan?
yeah, I think it's kind of similar. I think, well, there's even websites now which are compiling lists of potential interviewees that you could have and then generating AI responses based on what you're looking for and what questions you want to answer. And that's completely legal practice
Yeah.
to do that. And I think that's really strange. The fact that you can just get a response for your viewers from AI and what these professionals might think, but you don't hear it from them anymore. So
No.
even in like the interviewing side, it's affecting journalism. It's affecting everything, really,
To
isn't
be
it?
fair, it depends how you use AI these days, because you can use it as an
Yeah,
essential
that's true.
tool, especially for like visual development as well, to get ideas, to get concepts. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, you can't beat a robot. Like essentially, AI can always write about better articles, and at times, I don't know about you, Grace, but have you ever thought maybe I can do better than an AI when it comes to visual development?
I would say, well, if you're starting out as a beginner, maybe not yet.
Yeah.
As you can see, AR is like psychopathically crazy. But
Mm.
I would say that you're right. I think one point that you guys mentioned that sometimes work can be super like it has to be genuine. Like
Mm,
journalism. Like if everything is like super AI, it's just hard for someone to believe the article or really
yeah.
trust the article when everything is written by a like a system. But I would say maybe for art, since studios are super like what's it called, collaborative, like people work together. There's different pipelines. There's different teams. It's just super awkward for like a non-artist to be an AI artist and then come in to work with the team, but they don't know how the pipeline works. And can you imagine them going through the seniors asking for feedback and they say you have to do it again? They would go nuts,
Yeah.
Can you imagine them taking 5 hours on the prompt and they're like, shit, I have to do this over again. Sorry, can I swear in this podcast or can I
Did she
not
just say
swear on?
shit? Nah,
You
yeah,
can,
you're
it's okay.
absolutely fine. This is a
Yeah.
swear-free zone, so
Yeah.
don't you worry. Tell us,
Obviously, you
Ian.
work in visual development, so it's important to kind of talk about how that industry is at the moment. So, Grace, could you just tell us a little bit? We kind of touched on it earlier, but what is it like being a visual development artist in the gaming industry at the moment?
In a world full of AI.
Oh god, I like how they just add that in cherry on top. Like with a world full of AI, okay. I mean, I would say it's very interesting. I would say it's still similar as when there's no AI art. Basically, for a Viz dev artist, you're just working to create the visual scene, the visual feel of pre-production phase of things. Like for games, let's say Supercell, they want to create a super colorful world. They would need some Viz dev artists to create some quick visual scenes to give some examples. That way they could create the game pitch, send it to like investors if they agree on it, and then a game would be developed, I guess. So I would say that would be what this dev probably be focusing on in terms of games. Aside from that, maybe creating more environment assets, prop assets, stuff like that. Like for example, Sky. If you guys know the game Sky,
Yeah.
scenes and everything is
Mm.
this stuff. Yeah, like the feel and the atmospheric vibes. I think that's the big difference between this stuff and concept artists. For concept artists, they focusing on the skins, the characters, how
Yeah.
they would look. For us, we focus on the feeling of the world. I would say like the environment itself. Yeah.
Just to
But to
ask though,
answer,
did
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Supercell not use AI at all then? From
As of
your
now,
knowledge?
not really. Not that I know of. Like as of now, they do work with a team of artists So basically, they do have a group of artists that they work together like full time, like I would say like
Yeah.
3D artists mainly, because since their game is super 3D focused, they don't really exactly need me to be there permanently because they already have the visual stuff. So after they have me, they would end the contract, and the rest is for 3D artists to create the assets and the things to move around, right? So
Yeah.
majority, I would say, since I do have friends who work at Supercell, and
Okay.
they
Yeah.
do tell me in their department there's not a lot of AI artists. Actually, there's none. Same for mine.
Nice.
So I
That's
guess
brilliant.
that's what I know so far. Yeah,
And what game
which
did
is
you
great.
work on, sorry, with Supercell?
I can't really say much, but they do release a
Ooh.
trailer called Moko. If you guys have seen it before,
I haven't seen it.
yeah, they did put a trailer. I forgot exactly what kind of game it was, but visually it was very stylized.
Oh,
Supercell,
awesome.
whatnot. Definitely a way more colorful than Clash of Clans. That's for sure.
Is this their most recent game coming out, sorry?
Hmm?
Which Supercell game is this called, sorry?
Moko, Moco.
Oh, I have to have a
Yeah.
look at
We'll
that.
have, we'll
Wow.
have a look.
Yeah, and what
Yeah,
part did
yeah,
you
it's
do in the
really
game, or
pretty.
are you not allowed to say?
I guess I can't really exactly say what I'm responsible for in
Hmm.
detail.
Hmm.
I can say like what games I worked on since it's already out there and it's
Yeah, that's fine.
releasing
Yeah.
end of this year. So
Ooh.
do support that game,
Of
EB.
course, no, of
And
course.
and what's the difference for
Yeah.
you between working with a studio and kind of working and building your portfolio? Like, what is working in a studio like, I guess?
Hmm.
Like what do you mean? Like, is there a difference between working in a studio or working for myself? Like, what was
Yeah.
the
Is there a difference for you, or like, do you all go to the same studio, like, and work together as a team to build things? Do you kind of
right?
separate it all up into different roles or jobs that you want to do for a specific game? Like, how does that process work?
Well, I would say the big main difference when you're working alone, freelancing, or working in a studio, obviously the community is a big difference. So if you're
Mm.
not online person, being alone and freelancing, you do have to be like chronically online, which is pretty bad. Please touch grass, everyone. But
Yeah,
for
that's fine.
for those who are working alone, okay, they need to actively look for friends, I would say, to fit in. But for studios, luckily they do have a community, a group of people that you're working with. It's very fun, It's fun to be with the people that you could vibe with. And yeah, I guess like other than that, the main difference is the workflow as well. For freelance artists, not freelance, it's specifically if you're working alone, you can do whatever the fuck you like. Sorry, I'm sorry. Whatever the hell you want, right?
Honestly, it's
You
perfectly
could
fine.
basically do anything you want, any workflow you want, and no one's gonna stop you. But I think when you work in a studio, there's a lot of criteria you have to play to make sure the system keeps going smoothly. For example, deadlines, you have to submit things on time,
Hmm.
so the other
Mm.
department could take it from there. And I would say maybe the workflow as well. So like for example, when I work in Supercell, there was a specific workflow that they had to follow, and I have to follow as well. But now when I work with brownbacks, it's a completely different workflow, even though they are just as big. So like things like that, I have to get used to, like things like that. But other than that, I would say there's also the NDA stuff. Like, when
Mm.
you work in a
Hmm.
studio, you can't really share much of your work, unfortunately. There's a lot
Okay.
of instances where you see on Twitter where people get laid off and they can't show anything that they've worked for the past 6 years.
Oh wow.
And that would
Oh.
be really sad. Compared to someone you work alone and it's yourself, you can post whenever you want. So I guess there's a few main difference. I mean, there's a lot more, but
Mm.
yeah.
And I was going
Yeah.
to ask, Chris, would you say, obviously, you've worked for a company like Supercell and you've worked for indie development companies as well. Would you say there's a mass difference between which company you work for, like with workload and everything?
Oh, that's a huge difference for sure. Like, I mean, there's a lot of big difference, I would say. Like, first off, it would be the way, like, where you're placed. I would say, for example,
Mm.
in Supercell, when, like, I have someone to look up to and someone to follow and ask for
Mm.
feedback.
Oh, okay.
That's the main thing. And they have different departments where you can learn from and stuff. But I think when you're working on for something smaller, sometimes you could just be the art director.
Yes.
Which
Right,
is
makes
really
sense.
scary when you're a junior, when you just come in like, oh my god, I'm in the industry, and suddenly they put you in gunpoint and like go do like five
Yeah.
assets on your own, and you have 1 week, right? And that's also another thing that sometimes indie games, there's one like con, I would say. Sometimes they don't know too much of how much time you need or like how the workflow is. So like, can you imagine like, let's say a businessman, they make a whole small studio, but they tell you do concept art in 1 day. You would try to explain to them like, look, I can't do this in 1 day. I can do this in 5 days. Then they would say, look, I could use AI art then. And it's like,
Right.
you're like,
Oh, okay.
like, and that's where it would have conflict and stuff. Thank goodness I didn't experience that, but I do know some friends who have that issue with smaller indie companies. I think it's just the lack of knowledge and maybe some ignorance like play within that situation. But I think when you work for a bigger studio, of course they can be greedy and corporate and very like like lay you off a lot. But they do know how how the workflow works, so it's not really a huge issue in that part. Like it's just like a part of the system, and that's cool. But yeah, I guess that's the big main difference I would say. And another main difference would be easily said, like smaller studios, you get to stand out a lot more since you're the only artist in there. But you working, let's say with Supercell, you may only see one part of my stuff, and that's really it because they're working with 50 other artists. Yeah.
You've kind of
Yeah,
talked a
that's
lot about kind of building a portfolio and what that looks like and how important that is for all artists. Why is that so important? Is it about like pitching it? Does it help showcase all of your work to potential clients? How do you value sort of your portfolio?
guess it's the same thing as you guys with your podcast, right? Like the
Yeah.
vision of the thumbnail, the intro, the ad. I would say like the introduction. It's the same thing as that, but like for my work, it's like a brand thing. When that's what people first see you, and that's when their first impression will start to build from there. So I would say portfolio is basically the visual first impression, and you speaking is the vocal first impression. So sometimes when you want to apply for jobs, you can't really like this, like call and talk directly, and they don't get to know you as a person. So I would say portfolio is a way to help convey that message of like how good you are as an artist, and without like having to write a whole essay of like, please give me a job, right? You can just give your portfolio, and they're gonna
Yeah.
see it like, very very juicy work, and they would hire you from there. Yeah.
And we've kind
And
of
to answer your
talked
question, very important. Super important.
That's
Yeah.
for
true.
sure. We've kind of talked about how layoffs are affecting this industry, and the art industry is no exception to that. So, how is it kind of looking for work at the moment? Is it difficult? Are people trying to like hire you, but they just don't have the budget at the moment? Are you hearing from other studios you've worked with that they again want your work, but they again don't have the budget? Like, is that stuff that you're hearing? How is it affecting you?
I would say as of now, it's such a great area. I feel like people have a very skewed vision of how to job hunt. I think that's the main issue as of now because one thing the university or like schools don't really teach you how to job hunt. I don't know if it's something that your school is teaching, but for my school, like in like Teesside University, they don't teach you that. Same for the
Yeah.
school I went in Malaysia, they don't teach anything about job hunting at all. So when we come out, we only know very little. So I think that's the main issue is that people don't really know how to job hunt, and that actually plays a big factor of why they don't get hired, unfortunately, because most people I ask, like for example, how would you job hunt? They would say they scroll through job listings on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But for me, I directly talk to art directors. But in their perspective, it is not the case. They assume that it's rude, embarrassing, everything. That's why they don't do it. But that's how I got most of my jobs. So to answer your question, it is because of that, and that's how I got all my jobs. Most of my jobs were not like, it was quite smooth. Like after I left a job, I got another one, mostly because I talked to a lot of art directors here and there. And did I not get a job because of funding or because of AI art? I would say yes and no, because like when they say no, there's another studio that would take me anyways. So it's hard to tell if it is something that's going to permanently damage me on the long run because so far I'm still going on a high. So hope that answers your question. I'm sorry if it's not like super black and
No,
No,
white,
for
that's
you
sure.
know?
It
that's
definitely
absolutely
does.
Yeah,
perfect, right? Like I've always said, right?
yeah.
It's all good getting the first classes at
Mm.
universities, 2-1s, but it's how you come up as a
Yeah.
person, right? It's the confidence, it's your people
Yeah.
skills, it's your communication. Because if you go and you say, I've done this, I've done that, I've spoken to all these people, you can get someone walking with a first class, but they probably couldn't sit in a room against another person, could
It's
they?
networking,
So
isn't it?
true.
It is networking
Yeah,
end of the
so
day. You know,
true.
we do this podcast. You know, we never did a podcast before, but we had to put ourselves in these shoes, and here we are today, right?
You got to meet people to achieve anything, really, because that's it.
Yeah.
A weird example is like getting guests for a podcast. You know,
Yeah,
like finding
exactly.
people. The best way to do that is just to approach and ask rather than email like companies or.
Yeah.
You've got to speak to the people, you know, at the heart of everything.
No, exactly, right. So we're going to move on to the Q&A now. Timothy, have we got any questions that we got?
We do.
We do. So what is it?
Okay, so the first question for you, Grace, is how do you balance free time and work?
Okay, that's a lovely question. Thank you to those who are asking, I would say. As of now, how I would balance it is definitely having a to-do list. I know there's some people who don't like to-do lists, and it's okay. Like, I would say maybe just have them in your mind of like what you plan on doing. I say having a strong, solid time span of like when you're working and when you're not. I think that's super important, especially when you're an adult, especially when you're working in university and when things are fixed in time. So keep that in mind, and once you finish work, just drop everything, focus on playing and relaxing, and spend personal time on something else that matters. I think the main issue that would stop making this a success is like maybe during your work time you procrastinate, you would scroll through your phone, you would go to social media and didn't finish your work. I think you need to have a strong discipline of not doing that while you're working, so you will get all the job done and you would don't feel guilty, take a break. So I think that would be the answer. Hope that helps. Yeah.
No, for sure. I'm really bad for procrastinating. I always procrastinate. I can't. I need to get better at lists because I find they do help, but I also put off doing the lists.
No, I understand. But the thing is, if you've got your routine in front of you, you know what you're going to do throughout the day. But it also feels like sort of like pressure as well at the same time.
Yeah.
When I used to do on a whiteboard, I used to write what I'm going to do at 9 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night.
Wow, full schedule.
Full schedule. And you have to. It's all about organisational skills. But then you also feel committed, and it's kind of like more added pressure because you never know what you're going to do throughout the day. There's always going to be some change, no path's a straight line, right? Yeah,
I would
so
say
that's
be
where we go.
flexible about it. Like if you're super tired, just put it aside. I would
For sure.
For sure.
It's got to be centered around how you're feeling at the moment.
Precisely
Otherwise, you're never
right.
going to do any quality work.
No, exactly. So our second question today is, what got you into designing then?
What got me into designing? I would say definitely from shows I watch, from games I watch. I think this is gonna sound super cliche, but Studio Ghibli, I always pronounce it. Yeah.
What's your favourite
I'm a huge
Studio
fan
Ghibli
of that
film?
show. Yeah, huge fan of the whole thing, the collection.
Yeah.
I used to watch that for a long, like countless times, and I think that really inspired me get into the industry. Aside from that, during high school, I've met some friends who are really good artists, and that made me feel the urge to challenge them and do better art. So it was the deviant art days. I don't know if anyone who's listening to this have gone through deviant art, but it's very competitive, right? Like having those Alama trophies and shit. You're like, damn, I want to have those trophies. I'm gonna do good ass art and get that trophy, right? So that's what I was in like back then, and eventually it grew and I started to look into other artists, and that inspired me to move forward. I guess I would say I just find joy just improving my art. Like I get excited when I improve. So
No, for sure, right?
Kind of like the challenge part of it.
Yeah. Do you have like a aspiration after visual development, or is this the path you want to go for the time being?
I would say for the time being, I would love to continue being a visual development artist, but maybe I won't work in a studio for long. Like my goal right now is probably raise my ranks up to being maybe an art supervisor or director. But after that, I think I might leave. I'm gonna make my own podcast, maybe host my own art classes and stuff like that. That would be my goal. Hence why I accepted this podcast to
I appreciate it.
train the
Thank
way
you.
I communicate and stuff. Yeah.
No, great speaker, I have to say.
Yeah, because so that's my aspiration, you may say. I don't know, who knows, I might change, it might change into something else. Who knows? But yeah.
For sure. And our third and final question is, where, if people didn't have a background in art, where do people get started? How can people start to learn how to design?
Okay, I would say as of now, most people would have said go to art school. But I think because now there is so many really like huge scams when it comes to art schools. Like sometimes you pay a huge amount of money, but you are getting nothing. I would say for now, what you can do is research the local art schools near you and reach out to the graduates that were from those art schools. Ask them their honest opinion of the courses and stuff. And if it's right for you, go for it. But if it's not, I would say maybe aim for like art courses that like smaller, like schoolism. There's so many domestica. There's a lot of art courses online that you could definitely check out and go from there. Those are definitely a lot more cheaper than art schools in general. So go for that. But let's say if you're completely broke and you're like, listen, my mom's not gonna give me that money, right? They want me to be an engineer or something. Fine. Then maybe join art discords. There's a lot of art discord servers where you can join in. There's a lot of industry standard artists in there. In fact, I do have a Discord myself where I hang out there all the time, where I would give feedback and, I mean, just be in those Discord servers, ask for feedback, and grow with artists around you. That's the free option. And, just join the art events around you, right? Like, I know in UK and Europe, there's a lot of art plein air live drawing session. Just join it, talk to those artists, learn from them. I think when you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people, you will improve a lot more quicker. I think it's the same for everyone, including journalism, gaming. If you're surrounded with
sure,
the right
For
people,
sure, right?
yeah,
Discord just has so many uses.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
everywhere has a
We
Discord.
talk
Right?
about networking, right? And Discord is the way to go. Yeah?
Absolutely.
And I love how it supports each community.
Yeah.
Like we're journalists supporting gamers, and then we use visual development artists like yourself to promote gaming through journalism through Discord. So it's
It's all,
like,
it's all a huge circle,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's like a circle
Wow,
of
it's a
the
whole
eye.
pipeline. Oh
The
my
circle of
gosh.
Discord.
Yeah, of course, right. Well, thank you so much, by the way, for coming onto our podcast, by the way.
I hope you
Thank you
enjoyed
so
it.
much for having me, honestly. Yeah, I enjoy a lot. Thank you guys for having me.
No.
Honestly,
Yeah, it
congrats
was great.
on releasing this podcast, like the third episode. Woo,
well,
congrats.
Great episode.
I'm glad you're inspired to do a podcast yourself, right?
For sure. We hope we
Yeah,
helped in
also
that
one,
as well.
one last question. I just
Yeah,
want
of
to ask
course.
before we end this. Do you have a goal for this podcast, I would say? Like, what's your
So,
aspiration?
I think obviously when I first started, I was really like unconfident, right? Ewan was he's still a better speaker than me, but I think over time, I became a more confident person. I'd love to do podcasts.
You're doing
again.
great. Yeah,
And what about you, Ewan?
I think I just really love being able to explore the deeper issues within gaming, kind of like the AI talk we had
of
earlier.
course.
Like I've always loved video game art, so get to talk about things like this with people who know what they're talking about is
No, of
just really
course,
awesome,
right.
and I think it raises awareness for and starts conversation, which should be the point of any podcast, I think. So
No,
that's
precisely.
what I
And then
enjoy.
I was saying earlier, right? The reason we have this podcast is so that we can spread awareness. Find people like yourself, where visual development is probably very overlooked. You said to us earlier, Grace, if we played a video game and it's 100% AI, would we appreciate it? Obviously, we wouldn't, but there'll be others out there who, like you said, wouldn't
Yeah.
care. And this is why you're on the show to tell us how important it is
And
for
why they
you.
should care.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I also want to emphasize to those who are listening, if you guys have any other questions to ask me directly, I'm open to answer. I mean, Javier always reach out to me and I
Yeah, of
answer
course.
it pretty quickly. But just check me out on my socials. I don't know if I should plug it here. Should I?
no,
No,
go
we'll
ahead,
put some
go
links in the
ahead.
description as well of
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, just drop it in the description, honestly, guys. It's like, just check me out, Grace Ruyin, but my full username is Ruyinu. I'm open everywhere. I know some people might have typo, like, with that because it's my Chinese name. But do just check out the link in the description and do reach out because I'm always open to answer questions and help out with other artists, yeah. But thank you for having me, guys.
No,
It was
thank
really
you.
fun.
Well, thank you very much to everyone who's been watching and commenting along the entire time. We really appreciate all the engagement. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello. Thank you very much for watching it as well. Please make sure you like, subscribe, follow all of our socials. We have everything Overheat, and share with your friends if you think they'd care about AI, or maybe you know someone who doesn't care about AI and you need to be like, this is why. Show them this podcast. Every bit of engagement helps and pushes us to do more.
Well, we've got our final podcast episode on Thursday, so be sure to look forward for that. Our magazine's coming out soon, so not too long for that. And yeah, this will be posted on YouTube hopefully tomorrow, right?
We should be. More The Quarry, and you can see what we've been getting up to on that.
Yeah, and our free time streaming as well. And once again, look, go down in the description, follow Grace, give her the support. You know, she's an amazing visual development artist. And hopefully you lot have been inspired. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Grace, by the way.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.